The study has been long, and the reason the study's been long is because there's so much stuff in the book of Romans. We started our study last March. I don't know if you remember. We started this in March. My intent was to get through in just a couple months. Got into the book of Romans. The book, by the way, that many, many people testify has been the one single book that has changed the most lives in the New Testament. We got into that study and discovered, wow, can't cover this in 2 or 3 months. Matter of fact, the greats that preach, Spurgeon and all those great preachers of past time, they would take 3 to 4 years to study the book of Romans. I thought that we would be through chapter 8 in 1 or 2 Sabbaths. You know how many times how many presentations so far we've had in chapter 8? We're up to about 8. Chapter 8, called by many commentators one of the greatest chapter in the Bible. Now I know that's hard to do. That's like saying which one of your kids is the greatest. I grew up in a family of 9, so my mother was asked that question quite often. And what is the answer to that?
They're all special.
They're all what?
Special.
They're all special. And of course all the chapters in the Bible are. As we're told in the New Testament, if all the things could have been written just what Jesus did, it would involve what? Volume. And so the words that we do read, and what Paul is trying to tell us, especially here in chapter 8, I think every sentence is important, and that's what we discovered. So we've been going just maybe a verse, 1 verse, 2 verses at a time through chapter 8. Now, those of you who were here at our last study, 2 Sabbaths ago, we dealt with what I termed was the most misused text in the Bible. And I gave you some examples of that. And so as we look at this text, we discovered, and I hope you still remember some of those things we discovered about this greatest text in the Bible, or most misused text in the Bible. Which is it? Well, as we look at the text, we know that God causes all things. We discovered, and this is a review that we need. If you were here, we still need this review. If you weren't, you need it too. When Paul is talking about all the things, remember, we are studying in context. And we go backwards to see what all the things he's talking about, and the litany of things that he has there in the first part of chapter 8. What did we discover the things were? They were all crisis things. They were all things that came into our life that would try to destroy our faith. And those things, God, what does He do with those things? What do we discover? Well, here's the 4 points that we found in chapter 28. Verse 28. First of all, it's very clear there, what Paul is saying is for Christians only. He says, God will intervene and work out these things to those who what? Love Him. So first of all, it's to those who love Him. And to work out these things to the good. Now here was the important thing to remember. What was the good that Paul was talking about? The good was, if you'll read your text and go back in context, the good was to be like Jesus Christ. That's it. The good is not a good job. The good is not a good feeling. The good is not great circumstances. The good is not that there'll never be any bad. Matter of fact, we discovered all things are not good. Lots of bad things come into our lives. But Paul says the Lord will use those bad things, and what will He do with them? He will make them turn out what? good. And what is the good? The good is to be like Christ. That is what that text is talking about. And he says, and uses a word that we're going to look at today as we go into the next verses, knowing this is the good, not feeling it. Because we recognize that when you give your heart to Christ, what did Jesus say? If you follow me, you will have no trials. Is that what he said? What did he say? In your life you will have what? Tribulation.